Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's the Monday show on a Wednesday with me, Andrew Musgrove, and Aaron Stokes. Newcastle United have done as I said they would do, and they've beaten Arsenal 2-0 in the first leg of the League Cup semi-final. A performance of discipline, organisation, bravery, and clinicalness. Mikel Arteta's team ran out of ideas so much that the Spaniard decided to blame the ball in use. We're going to look back on a great night down at the Emirates for Newcastle United. And do you know what else is great, Aaron? NordVPN. You know what I do by now, ladies and gents. Hit the link in the podcast description box. Get a very special discount offer on your NordVPN plan. Perfect for away days to keep yourself protected and supporting the podcast. Welcome back, Aaron. We couldn't let last night's performance and win go without an additional Monday show. So lots to talk about. Just some of what you saw.
Yeah, lots to talk about. And I just want to maybe start this episode by saying I've got a feeling that it's going to be, of course, a positive episode, but I feel like I'm going to have to be the weight that holds you down from getting too ahead of yourself and floating off, because not to sound like Eddie Howe, but the job's not done. It's half time. And yes, look, let's be honest, last night was fantastic. A statement win, a statement performance, which we'll go on to. And it puts them in fantastic stead. You don't suspect they'll lose or throw away that lead at St James's Park, but full focus must be on that second leg. But as far as first legs go, absolutely fantastic. I mean, I was sat here 2 days ago saying, play for a draw, take a 0-0 home to St James's, and we laughing. And Eddie Howe thought, screw that, I want to go on better.
Eddie Howe clearly listened to the podcast and thought that Mr. Musgrove knows what he's talking
about. Then Aaron
about.
Stokes doesn't know what he's talking about.
So. You know, I was just always confident that the momentum would get them through, even without Fabian Schär, even without Bruno Guimaraes. I just feel like this is their time, and I get what you're saying, and I totally accept and share your sentiment about the job only being half done. Eddie Howe said that in various different ways in the post-game press conference, and he's totally right. You've got to focus on Bromley and the games coming between now and the second leg. But I did feel really confident about last night because they're on that wave of optimism, that wave of positivity, and momentum is key, and they've got that. They've got the wind behind them.
You felt a lot more confident than me, but I think one question I would put you is, did you expect that performance from Newcastle? Did you expect that what's the word? Did you expect that
confidence?
Yeah, the confidence, the style of play, the fact that they were relentless. It was at times felt like Newcastle were the home team, the way they were pressing from the front. Did you expect Eddie Howe to go that way at Arsenal?
Not entirely, but I always felt like if they showed aggression and desire and ambition very early on, then that's how they would get the better of Arsenal. And I think they showed that right from the off. If we were in any doubt about whether Newcastle United were going to come to the Emirates and just make up the numbers, right from the word go, they showed how they were going to set up and how they were going to go about it. And Arsenal, for all the talent they've got, and the manager's fantastic, as much as I don't like him, they couldn't handle Newcastle's ambition, aggression, and a little bit of arrogance. They came to Arsenal's backyard and said, "I'm setting up here."
That's probably the word that I was looking for, the arrogance of that Newcastle performance.
But you know what? Newcastle United, back in the days of qualifying for the Champions League under Howe, that's what they were. They were arrogant. They had that nasty streak about them, but they were confident in what they could achieve. They showed no fear now over the last year, so that's been lacking a little bit. It is certainly back now. And to go down to Tottenham, to go to Old Trafford, and then to go to the Emirates, grounds where they've largely had really bad results at, and to come out with 3 wins, goodness me. Ask me the question. Ask me the question.
Are they back?
They are back.
Well, it's a good point that you've made then. It segued perfectly to what I'm going to say. And I know I've just started this episode 5 minutes ago by saying I want to keep your feet on the ground. But for me last night, that not just the result, but the manner of the performance felt a little bit like the changing of the guard, sort of. It was sort of the game where I looked at it and thought, okay, Newcastle United are really contenders now. And if they can build on this, they can maybe add 1 or 2. This could maybe be the game where we look back in a couple of years' time and think, remember when they went down to Arsenal and really laid down a marker with that performance? And I just look, to get slightly off the topic of last night, I looked at those 2 squad last night and I think, I mean, this is what, year 5 of Mikel Arteta, and I think you look at that Arsenal squad and you think they really need some bigger players up front. They've got a lot of good defenders, but I just look at the way Newcastle's squad is and I think they've built that squad so perfectly compared to what Arsenal have done, as we touched on Monday, as we touch on in the next couple of weeks in January. If they can just build on that with 1 or 2 additions, I think you've got a squad here who are more than capable of reaching the top 4 every season.
Well, fingers crossed. And what performance by every single man in black and white last night. Goals from Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon. And as we said there, they started the game with aggression and they started with ambition. How important was it, Aaron, to set that marker really early on?
I mean, really important. I mean, look, it was a brave strategy. It was a bold strategy because if it had gone wrong and Newcastle had gone front foot, pressed well, been caught out. I mean, they very nearly got caught out early on when Martinelli broke free. Newcastle pressing really high. Dan Burn sort of really moving into midfield to try and keep Arsenal compact in their own half. On another day, if that had gone against them and Martinelli had scored, we might be sat here going, was it a little bit naive? But it was certainly a statement. It was a bold way of playing. It paid off for them. The pressing from the front was fantastic. David Raya, wanting to start those goal kicks short. Murphy and Gordon, making sure the centre backs couldn't get them. Isak dropping a little bit deeper to make sure Partey couldn't pick it up in midfield. It was executed to perfection. And then when they had to defend, and let's be honest, they did. Arsenal had 23 shots on goal in total. They were throwing bodies, in front of the ball. Dan Burn, heroic again. Sven Botman, has returned and looked like he hasn't missed a beat. Hall and Livramento, fantastic going both ways. Gordon, fantastic tracking back without the ball. Just a really, really assured performance. And as I just said, a really brave one to go down there against a team who, don't often lose at home and play that way against them and get the result. Eddie Howe will be absolutely delighted with that.
Because I wonder if Arsenal came in that game feeling a little bit distracted, obviously not going very well in the league, even though they are second, but they're off the pace to Liverpool. I mean, everyone is, but Mikel Arteta would have had the Premier League title in his sights, and it doesn't look like he's going to get it. Also, but maybe a bit of complacency because it's 1 win in 13 down the Emirates for Newcastle, and then you have to go back to 2001 at Highbury for the win there. And I just think with Newcastle United setting the tone so early on, the first big chance fell to Joe Linton. Probably should have done a little bit better from an Alexander Isak cutback. I think that really probably did rattle Arsenal a little bit, and they knew right from the word go they were in a battle here, and a battle really, when you look at it physicality wise, few teams have a chance of winning that battle, especially against the likes of Joe Linton and Tonali when they all muscle and really want to leave their mark on players.
Yeah, absolutely. It set the tone, really, that first Joe Linton chance early on where you had Isak breaking down the channels, pulling Saliba out. And with that happening, you've got to get bodies in the box. Now, as Alexander Isak takes it from out wide and gets in the box, you've got Joe Linton, Willock and Gordon all busting to go to get in the penalty area. So it wasn't just the pressing on the front foot when they didn't have the ball. They were really making sure they were trying to take these chances when they got in behind Arsenal. And I know we'll talk about Isak more, obviously, as the show goes on, but that was the first glimpse of what we saw from him. And I mean, he only got better from that moment. He terrified that Arsenal defence, and I wonder maybe if they'll switch their transfer attention to him now that they've seen him in the flesh.
I mean, they can try, but unless they've got 150 million.
Because I mean, they haven't been linked with him yet, so I'm wondering whether last night's performance was maybe the. No, obviously I jest there, but he was fantastic first half. Not only the goal, but what he did with the ball. He was dropping deep, playing some lovely passes, making, as I've just mentioned, fantastic runs down the channels and really exposing and spreading Arsenal's defence. Just an unbelievable performance from the attacking players yet again.
Yeah, and we will speak more about Isak because he's making records, he's making history, and he's just looking every bit like £150 million player. And there were a few scares though. Arsenal set piece routines causing a bit of havoc in the box. Martin Dubravka, thought he did okay, but he definitely looked like he couldn't catch a cold from Arsenal's corners. Timber very early on had a header over the top of the bar, and there were a few instances like that throughout the game where on another day, if the defender or the Arsenal players can keep that down, it's probably a goal. But 11 corners that did look dangerous, and yet Newcastle United dealt with it.
Yeah, and it as we touched on Monday, Arsenal really deadly from set pieces, and you could see early on Newcastle were really having to stay concentrated. They'll have worked on that all week because they know the threat from Arsenal. But as I said, even when that second ball was dropping in the box, you had 2 or 3 players racing towards it, putting their bodies on the line, and ultimately nullifying Arsenal's threat, which has proved so potent this season.
But also what you could see, especially with free kicks that Arsenal had, Newcastle's defence was so well drilled and so well organised in terms of just allowing Arsenal's men to start behind them, and then obviously up goes the flag. And obviously that's what they've worked on during the week. It's not just a case of marking man for man. It's been a little bit clever with trying to catch them offside. It's brave. It's very brave, especially away from home. But for the large part of the game, it worked really well.
Yeah, we've just spoken about that braveness going forward, but actually, as you say, it was equally on display at the other end as well. I mean, I think it's probably at this point in the show we should just give a shout out to Dan Burn, because not only has he been fantastic in recent weeks, but I thought last night was the pick of the bunch for him.
He was my man of the match.
Yeah,
he
was
won
just amazing.
4 out of 5 aerial duels. Botman won 7 of 8, and obviously no Fabian Schär, so there was a little bit of concern about how Newcastle United would deal with his absence. The 2 games he's missed, he might find it difficult to get back into the side, to be quite honest with you, because Dan Burn has been absolutely brilliant. Eddie Howe in recent weeks has already said it's not a case of Dan Burn just dropping out when everyone's fit. And another performance like the one last night, like I say, my man of the match. For a man who lacks pace, he is an unbelievable defender.
Yeah, and the thing that I noticed is I always look back at that Chelsea game down at Stamford Bridge when Newcastle got beat quite easily, and Dan Burn got caught out so many times.
Shocker.
And he kept dropping really short, didn't he, to try cover Nicholas Jackson or Cole Palmer, and him and Schär got turned, more times than they'll care to remember. Last night, we actually saw Dan Burn in that same role where he was he was pushing so high up the pitch, and he very rarely got caught out. And it looks like he's maybe working on that part of his game, because, as you say, he doesn't have the pace to maybe catch some of these, rapid fire strikers that he's got to mark. But just absolutely colossal, so brave, and as we said, your man of the match. I think he was definitely in the contention for me, and I just think not only last night but the last 6 or 7 games, he deserves so much credit. And as you just touched on there, Botman, Burn, and Schär now fighting out for 2 places. Really, really interesting to see what Howe goes with. I think Botman's injury and the fact he's played twice in a couple of days will probably make that decision for Eddie Howe. He did potentially pick up a little groin niggle as well last night, Sven Botman, which they'll have to assess. But it's anyone's guess as to who he goes with further down the line towards the back end of the season.
Yeah, let us know in the comments in the weeks to come who starts at centre-back. Does Fabian Schär come straight back in, for example, for that game against Wolves next week? Let us know in the comments. And it's probably a test of his character, Dan Burn, because he'll not be immune to all the chatter that goes on social media. I mean, his family's probably having the same chatter, probably taking the mick out of him. Oh, Botman's on his way back. What does that mean for you, Dan? So to actually rise to the challenge, he no doubt has used as a little bit of added motivation. He said after he signed that new extension that he wasn't just here to make up the numbers. He wanted to stay in the first team, and everybody went, "Oh, that's fair enough, Dan." But I tell you what, he's shut up the doubters, he's shut up the critics. I genuinely do believe it's going to be very hard for Eddie Howe to make this decision. I don't think Dan Burn drops out until he has a stinger.
I'll be totally honest. I don't think you can even contemplate dropping him out at the minute. He has been the most consistent defender for Newcastle United this season.
Could you going forward play Botman and Burn together and keep Schär out?
If it's hard, isn't it? Because Fabian Schär, the last 2 games aside, has been a total ever present. I mean, he never misses games through injury. Despite the fact he goes down every game with a head injury or whatever else. He's so reliable, he's so dependable. But and I mean, I had my doubts about Botman and Burn playing together because they're both left-footed, and you often see 2 right-footed centre-backs playing together, but you very rarely see 2 left-footed centre-backs playing together. But it's really worked the last 2 games. And look, it's early days, don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but Sven Botman looks like he can play on the right side. And for me, at the minute, if Sven Botman's fit for Wolves next week, I would really contemplate, and I'd never thought I'd be saying it, but maybe leaving Fabian Schär out and playing Botman in alongside each other. I don't think he will do that. I think it'll probably be Botman eased back in, but the last 2 games they've looked colossal together, both of them.
Be interesting to what he does with Botman, because anyhow, historically has been very cautious with players coming back from injury. I mean, he said the other day Botman's been available from Aston Villa, but we just want to take it easy. But now he's played these 2 games against 2 tough opponents. If he's not in the starting 11 against Wolves, because he's arguably on paper Newcastle's best technical centre back, certain fans will be asking questions. He's passed the 2 tests he's been given. So for me, I think there's a chance he could start alongside Burn on Wednesday against Wolves.
Yeah, look, it all depends how he comes through this week. But also, as you've just touched on there, I wonder whether Eddie Howe's maybe just thinking, okay, we've given him 180 minutes when we probably wouldn't have in usual circumstances. Is it now time to maybe just scale it back a little bit? And I think, if Fabian Schär had been fit last night, he would have started, and we would have had given Botman his 90 minutes against Bromley. Obviously, that hasn't worked out. highly doubt Sven Botman will play against Bromley now. Even before that, potential groin injury that he picked up last night. But out of the three, as I say, I think Dan Burn at the minute would be the last one of the three that I'd want to drop out the team.
I totally agree, and it's fantastic to be having this conversation. I mean, how much is Sandro Tonali's form in front of the centre-back pair, and whoever it may be, how much is that a reason for the likes of Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, now Sven Botman looking brilliant?
Yeah, it's huge, and it's something that we've highlighted in recent podcasts and over the last couple of weeks, because it has essentially been the last 6 or 7 games. You've noticed a real difference and a real solidity in the back four, and that is a large part because you've got Tonali sweeping up in front of them. Now, that's not to say Bruno Guimaraes wasn't a capable number 6, but I just think Sandro Tonali is much more defensive minded than Bruno. And there was a moment last night really early in the game where Sandro Tonali picked the ball up in the centre circle and sprayed a lovely ball to Jacob Murphy on the right. Fantastic pass. Murphy crosses it in, David Raya collects it, and Arsenal counter-attack. And Sandro Tonali, seconds after playing that Hollywood pass, has switched back on and he's covering and he ends up clearing the danger at the other end. Now, if that had been someone like Bruno or someone like Jonjo Shelvey, they'd probably be standing and admiring that pass for a couple of seconds and thinking, that was rather good. Sandro Tonali was just, straight back in, and he's proved just as good going backwards as he has going forwards in recent games.
I watched Sandro Tonali, and there was a moment last night when Newcastle played it out from the left. Hall had it. It went to Tonali in the middle. And it was like he has a shield around him, like a force shield, like they can't get anywhere near him. Like no player got anywhere near him. He just passes the ball off down to Gordon, and Gordon's away. But it was like he's just fantastic on the ball, isn't he? He seems to take all the time in the world, and no one can get anywhere near him. He just is getting better every single week. And you mentioned there Bruno Guimaraes, Newcastle United obviously missing him last night. They didn't look like they missed him at all, and that's even with Joe Willock not really setting the world alight.
Well, this is another reason why I think that the win is such a statement and a potentially change of the guard, is because how often have we seen Newcastle United lose or draw without Bruno in the team? It was always that big bogey stat, wasn't it? Newcastle have gone X amount of games without winning when Bruno starts. I'll be completely honest on that. We said on Monday, didn't we? We thought Sean Longstaff would come in. It was a bit of a bold decision to throw Joe Willock in. Probably didn't set the world alight as much as he would have wanted, given that he's fighting for his place. But I didn't look at that midfield last night and think, they're really missing Bruno Guimaraes, which I thought they would, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, but as you say, that's fantastic for Newcastle United to be able to win without him. And the last few weeks, as we mentioned on Monday, have kind of been, I think, a chance to reset what went before. Going to these grounds and fearing going to Old Trafford, fearing going to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and fearing going down to the Emirates, and they've come through with flying colours. And you're right, there's so many turning points in the last few games, and who knows, what the future holds. But the standard's now been set, hasn't it? Newcastle United for too long were the fearful ones, I think is the right way to say it, and they've gone down. And Eddie Howe said in his press conference as well, we've got to win at these grounds. If we want to be ambitious and we want to win things, you've got to defeat these teams away from home.
Yeah,
what a few weeks it's been.
Yeah, look, it feels weird saying that it's 3 of the big 6 when 2 of them are sat in 12th and 13th. But I think, just as you say, the psychological impact of going to Old Trafford, of going to Tottenham again and winning like that, on top of what they obviously did last night, will be huge for that dressing room, as well as huge for obviously what they want to do this season in terms of the Premier League and the Carabao Cup. I mean, now they need to back it up. I hate to go over all ground, but we said it after Villa and Ipswich and Leicester that they needed to go and really, carry this form on. You look at that fixture list now: Bromley, Wolves, Bournemouth, Fulham coming up in the next couple of weeks. Really winnable games on paper. And again, not to go over all ground, but what we touched on the podcast on Monday about how no European distractions for them. Basically, a full squad to pick from injury wise. Everything is aligning in their favour. Now they just need to make sure they can kick on and continue this form into the games where they should be winning.
Yep, indeed. Botman was involved in the opener for Newcastle. He knocks on a long free kick. Murphy gets to Isak, who fires home. Before we talk about the striker and his goal, it's great to see Newcastle United making the most of the big lads.
Yeah, Sven Botman's return is huge for that. Obviously, they did really well from set pieces last night, as we touched on defensively, but also going forward. Great to see that knock on from Botman. Don't really think Jacob Murphy meant that assist, did he? But he'll take credit for it. He's in fantastic form. And Alexander Isak's never going to miss from there. And I actually think that's what Arsenal were probably missing. They've got so many defenders like that who can play the Botman role and knock that on. But we saw Kai Havertz miss a sitter last night. Gabriel Jesus just isn't the player he once was. I know he scored a couple of goals against Crystal Palace of late. Arsenal really looked like they were missing that striker, and Newcastle were capitalising from those set pieces.
Yeah, the goal, it's 10 in the last 8 consecutive games now for Alexander Isak. He just reacts quickest in the box, a lovely little dink into the corner. We asked the question on Monday, is he the best striker in the Premier League right now? Is he the best striker in Europe right now? In the world, potentially?
I mean, you could make a really, really good argument for it. He's certainly the most informed player, I'd say, in the world right now. And again, I don't want to sound like we're biased, but who else would you rather have in that team right now than Alexander Isak? There's nobody really that I look around and think, oh, you know what, I would fancy him. I love Alexander Isak, and it's not just for the goal scoring record and the quality in front of goal, but as we touched on earlier, it's the all-round play. It's the confidence when he's got the ball at his feet. It's the intelligence to drop deep and bring Murphy and Gordon into the game. I mean, again, I don't want to sound biased, but I feel like 150 million shouldn't even get you as left boot at this stage.
50 goals now for Newcastle United in 89 games, which is a better record than Alan Shearer. But as you said, it's more than just his goals. It is his all-round play, and you've alluded to it already. Throughout the game, he was dropping deep, receiving the ball, turning and setting teammates away, and then giving his all to get into the box. And so important to how Newcastle United won that game last night.
Absolutely. And I think, we often talk, don't we, about Eddie Howe's system, and he likes that rigid 4-3-3. If Eddie Howe or another manager further down the line was ever to change that system, you could see Alexander Isak playing on the right or on the left if he needs to. You could see him playing as a second striker behind another number 9. He's just got that versatility. And then, as we touched on, the goal record is fantastic. He just steps onto that pitch, and I'm sort of a little bit bored of not asking, but hearing Eddie Howe ask questions about how good it can be. Is he confident every time he steps on the pitch? But when he's scoring 8 games in a row, these are the questions you get asked. But he does generally look like every time he plays, he's gonna find the back of the net.
I think the fact that he's now given everything to get into the box once he's set Newcastle United away, that's the big difference from earlier in the season, because too often, very early on in the campaign, we were seeing him doing the first part of what he does really well, i.e. getting the ball and setting the wingers away. But then he wasn't in the box. So when Murphy or Gordon down the flank and putting the ball in the box, there was no one there to meet it. Whereas now,
last night especially,
he's there. And we saw that for the second goal. He gives the ball to Murphy and he absolutely breaks a sweat to get into the box, takes a shot, it's saved, it falls to Gordon, and it's 2-0. And I just think he's just going to get better and better and better. I guess if we're going to pick one negative, it is the fact that he came off after feeling his hamstring at half-time. Eddie Howe in the press conference afterwards said, we can't lose him. We didn't want to risk it. If we talk in an ideal world, Aaron, this January, you would like to see them go out and get a striker who Eddie Howe trusts to replace him. Because again, poor William Masula, he ended up playing 5-5, nothing up top. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But clearly he doesn't feel like he's got the option to play another striker up there when Alexander Isak needs to come off. And look, we don't want to bring this podcast down, but it is a massive worry.
Yeah, it's the only sort of fear we've had in recent weeks, isn't it, about Alexander Isak playing that amount of games. Just on that, obviously, for those who obviously aren't aware, Eddie Howe said in his press conference last night that Alexander Isak sort of felt his hamstring a little bit before he came off. It did look in real time like Isak was coming off just to make way for another defender. Obviously, Lloyd Kelly was the man to replace him. Thankfully, they've got Bromley this weekend in a game which, he probably wouldn't have played anyway. So you've just got to think, keep your fingers crossed that he's back for Wolves this time next week, because let's be honest, Newcastle United aren't, I'd be very, very surprised if they brought in another striker or another attacking player before that game next week.
Well, one man who is back for the Wolves game is Matthias Cunha. Just saying, Paul, if you watch it, get him signed. But yeah, great goal. Well, another goal for Anthony Gordon. He anticipates it, which is what the best wingers do, and he taps it home. He's finding his form at just the right time as well, isn't he, Anthony Gordon?
He is, yeah, and there's a fantastic stat that he's now got 16 goal involvements in 18 games against the so-called Big Six since the start of that last season. Really big game player, and certainly in recent weeks he's found that form that he's maybe been missing at the start of the season. He's adding goals back into his game again. Some fantastic tracking back in that first half. There was a moment where Dan Burns sort of slipped on the halfway line. Havertz looked like he was going to race through, and Gordon does really well. He ultimately fouls the player, but he got back and stopped the attack. Just looks like a player really enjoying a good purple patch. I mean, all three of them are. Jacob Murphy again, another game last night. We've spoken for weeks and months, haven't we, leading up the January window about Newcastle needing another front three, but at the minute, those three are absolutely undroppable.
I thought Gordon was excellent going back. Just what I loved about him when you were watching Newcastle United happen to sit a little bit deep, and this happened in the first and second half, he was gesturing, he was organising the back line over on the left in the midfield, telling people where to go. And I think that was absolutely crucial. And over the last few weeks, the amount of defensive work he's put in against Tottenham, we saw it as well. We can talk about his goals and his assists, but you really have kind of an invaluable asset there in Gordon when it comes to the back line.
You do, and there was just also that lovely bit of cheekiness as well, doing the Thierry Henry celebration, which Newcastle United fans will love, Arsenal fans will hate. And again, it was just, I mean, that game last night in fixtures gone past, there would have been a lot of sort of feistiness and time wasting and whatnot. Last night there wasn't, was there? There was just that Newcastle United performance where
Mikel
they won on
Arteta
merit.
seemed to think there were because he put his wrist up to check his watch, and I'm sure it was only like 65 minutes on the clock.
Well, and also weirdly, I completely missed the part where Newcastle United were playing with the Premier League ball and Arsenal were playing their game with the Carabao Cup ball, because he had a little moan about that as well, didn't he?
I've got that clip. We'll play that at the end because we're not going to let Mikel Arteta get away with that. I mean, that's in the category of the light bulb moment. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with that, just Google Mikel Arteta and light bulb, and you will have quite an enjoyable 5 minutes of him trying to motivate his side with a light bulb. It is that strange. But yeah, Jacob Murphy, you've talked about it there. I think he's created 7 of Isak's last 10 goals. Someone might correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that was the stat that I heard last night. As we said on Monday, doesn't remove the need for an upgrade on Newcastle's right wing. Certainly makes Newcastle's intentions of this month a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting to see what they do in the next couple of weeks, because as we've touched on, it does really depend on what they can do outgoing. It now looks like Martin Dubravka might have said his goodbyes based on that sort of Thierry farewell last night, despite Eddie Howe again insisting he doesn't want to lose him. Miguel Almiron gets his little cameo, doesn't he, at the end of the game? Sort of playing anywhere really, because Newcastle weren't playing with a striker. So yeah, really interested to see what to do in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, Murphy, I just think it's absolutely brilliant. I do think there's a question though over whether Newcastle United really need to be kind of unforgiving when it comes to what happens with Murphy, because a lot of people say they should have sold Miguel Almiron in that summer when he had that purple streak.
Yeah.
They didn't. Did they hedge their bets on him continuing that form when really deep down we knew he probably wouldn't do? And the same question I think has to be asked of Jacob Murphy. Look, he's been absolutely brilliant over the last 6-7 weeks. But the start of the season, he let himself down after having a great pre-season. So that question I think needs to be asked by Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe is whether Jacob Murphy can consistently produce what he has done over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
If he can, brilliant, take the gamble, but it has to be obviously be an educated gamble, because what we don't want to be doing is sat here come March, April time and Murphy's form suddenly dipped off, because what you will then get is him unfortunately becoming the scapegoat as he was a few months ago. So I do think there has to be a serious conversation asked about really how far, how much more, how much higher can Jacob Murphy go, and can he do it week in, week out?
Yeah, and I think, look, again, we know the PSR constraints, we know the financial limitations that Newcastle are dealing with this month, but if they can shift somebody like Miguel Almiron out, if they can shift maybe another 1 or 2 players out, I think that opens the door perfectly for you to sign a right winger. And then how good would it be to have Jacob Murphy maybe pushing someone or vice versa, just to get the best out of each other? We've seen it with Gordon and Barnes earlier this season. We've seen it in the midfield. We're now seeing it at the back. They need 2 players who can play in that first team in every position. And at the minute, Jacob Murphy is holding down the zone in that position. Miguel Almiron's nowhere near the first team.
Well, that's what you want. You don't just want someone coming in who knows that their name is going to be the first name on the team sheet. You want it to be a competition. Eddie Howe will want it to be a competition. And if they do go out and sign a right winger this month, that person coming in will know they'll have a battle on their hands against Jacob Murphy. Let's hear what Eddie Howe had to say about Jacob Murphy, because he was asked about him in his post-match press conference. Here's what the gaffer said.
He's been very good, yeah. I mean, I thought Jacob was, I know Jacob was one of those players that was tiring a little bit today, given everything in the game, in the previous games and today, and we ask a lot of him physically. So I thought tactically, again, he was excellent. He plays with, again, a really deep understanding of what we need him to do. He's got quite a complex role in the team. I thought he was very good today again.
He was very good, had a hand in both goals, but you've got to praise him and praise other players on the team as well, because fatigue, as Eddie Howe said in his post-match press conference, was an issue. That's why they ended up going 5-5-0, because the players were picking up little niggles, or indeed they were feeling a little bit fatigued. Murphy clearly sounded like he was knackered even before the game kicked off. It didn't show, though.
No, it didn't at all. And, you've got to think, I know we've just said that front three are undroppable, but they've played a lot of games and a lot of really testing games over the last 5 or 6 weeks or so. And obviously the winning will no doubt help with that fatigue. But I think Bromley's coming at a good time just to give some of these key players a little bit of a rest before the Premier League action returns. But yeah, it didn't show. And actually, just on that 5-5-0, before we move on, I thought, and I think you tweeted something similar, that I thought they'd maybe gone for that system a little bit too soon. They maybe invited a bit of Arsenal pressure on before they really needed to, but it worked really well, and they kept Arsenal out and kept them quiet really, really well.
Arsenal had absolutely no answer. I think my biggest concern was leaving Gordon on after that booking. Thankfully, he did go off a few moments later. But Joe Linton was absolutely colossal, especially in those last 10 minutes. There was a moment when he wins a foul against Zinchenko, gives everything to get there and draws the foul. He was just brilliant again. And part of the reason, him alongside Tonali, why Bruno's absence wasn't felt maybe as much.
Yeah, absolutely. We've mentioned it a lot on this pod, haven't we, in recent weeks, about how Joe Linton's form was maybe a little bit shaky at the start of the season, but he looks like a player playing on real confidence now. He's got that sort of nasty streak back, but he's trying to, sort of toe that line well. He's maybe got a little bit lucky a couple of times, but last night I thought it was just the perfect physical performance against a very, very good Arsenal midfield. Kept Declan Rice quiet all night. Long may it continue.
Arsenal fans not happy with a potential shove in the back against Odegaard for Isak's opener.
Nothing in that for me.
Yeah, I agree. Kai Havertz missing a sitter as well. That also helped Newcastle win the game.
Yeah.
He wasn't maybe as cocky or as arrogant as he usually is when he faces Newcastle United. Just to get your kind of another answer there on Isak, do you think Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe this morning, when they get up and they've had their coffee and they've had their little chats, do they look at the issue with Isak and go, we're going to have to try and make something work here?
Look, I think they'll want to know in the next couple of days how serious it is. Hopefully it isn't serious. It didn't look too serious. Obviously, we didn't really notice it until Eddie Howe admitted it last night. If Alexander Isak, goes for a scan this week and is out for 6 weeks, I think Newcastle are going to have to pull something out of the bag. They're going to have to find the funds from somewhere or move players on that they maybe didn't look to it. But I think we'll know more in the next couple of days, certainly when we speak to Eddie Howe on Friday.
And sticking with the transfer window, you've mentioned Martin Dubravka. Before we get on to his future, his performance last night, a couple of decent saves, a couple of scary moments where he struggled with the corners, but he another decent performance from him and another clean sheet.
Yeah, a little bit shaky compared to his recent games. Could I give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe in the back of his mind he's thinking this is the last time I'm playing for Newcastle United? Possibly, given the reaction that we saw at full time. As I said on Monday, I think, Tuesday's game at Arsenal was probably going to be his last. It certainly looks that way. For those who haven't heard or seen Eddie Howe's press conference from last night.
Let me stop you there, young man. Let me play the clip. I'm prepared.
Great minds think alike. Yeah,
here's Eddie Howe speaking about the future of Martin Dubravka.
The chance he could stay at the club and even be offered a new contract.
Well, that would be my wish. I've got nothing to add to that. We are, of course, with Martin, been preparing this game. We've had a lot of games in quick succession, so I've not spoken to anybody about that.
Can you afford to lose Martin at the minute? Because he's one of probably the most informed players.
He's playing very, very well, and certainly from my side, I wouldn't want to lose him at all.
So just in case you couldn't hear the questions, and it is one of my biggest frustrations with press conferences, please give journalists microphones so we can hear the questions. We had a question there asking about whether Eddie Howe would like to give Martin Dubravka a new contract, and he said he would, which I was very surprised about, because even if that's his train of thought, I did not think he'd admit that in the public. You then had been asked about whether this was his final game and was he going on. He said, "Look, I've been concentrating on the games, and no." And obviously, then he would like to keep him. Does this suggest, Aaron, that there's a little bit of disagreement maybe in the boardroom when it comes to transfers? Because Eddie Howe has been very, very clear there about what he would like to see happen with Martin Dubravka.
That certainly felt like a little bit of a very focused message to those at the top, didn't it? Of, hang on, I'm going to lose my number one goalkeeper in a couple of days potentially if you have your way, and we currently don't have our usual number one ready to go. It's a really interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because if this interest had came 6 weeks ago, we'd be saying goodbye to Martin Dubravka, and I don't think anyone would have real issues with it. Now, one, because of his form, two, because of Nick Pope's absence, which shouldn't be too much longer, it looks like there's a real tug of war between wanting to keep and wanting to go. Now, I think if we take recency bias away from it, I think we should probably be looking at it and saying, should Martin Dubravka really get a new contract? I don't know if he should. And I'm going to completely contradict that by saying, well, not contradict it, but I think if Martin Dubravka goes now, it's a good time for him to go. And what I mean by that is he's had a fantastic last 6 weeks, and I think he's maybe redeemed himself after, one, being a little bit shaky last season, and two, that lingering Manchester United move, which didn't work out and maybe earned him a little bit of resentment.
Goes out on a high.
He goes out on a high, but then also just to play devil's advocate, I get Eddie Howe's verdict because he clearly doesn't trust Odysseus Vlachodimos, and if Nick Pope picks up a setback, is he now going to be stuck with Vlachodimos long into February, into March? Does it then mean they have to go out and sign a goalkeeper, which it doesn't look like they have the capacity to do at the minute? It's a really interesting dynamic, because of those factors I've just mentioned.
Personally, I wouldn't give him a new deal, but I would want to see him stay until the summer. I think it's massively risky. So I think it's massively risky cashing in now. And look, I've seen reports of up to £8 million from, which would be unbelievable.
Let's just get one thing straight. I don't think Newcastle United would even get £1 million to Martin Dubravka.
You don't?
Well, he's in the last 6 months of his contract. He's 36 years of age this month. Any figure of that notion, I think anything more than $1 million or a couple of million is, you won't get that from. No way.
I agree. I think it is massively risky, though, to take him out, bring in potentially Vlachodimos until Nick Pope returns. I think what it does, though, when Nick Pope does come back into it, it puts huge pressure on Nick Pope, who is already so shaky with his feet. Yeah. And if you've got him back in net, back passes going back to him, unfortunately, the crowd are not going to be able to hide their kind of fear that he's going to miss control of the pass. I think it's a really unfair position to put Nick Pope into, and selling Martin Dubravka does put the weight of the world on his shoulders, I think.
And just on that, I put a post out last night on Blue Sky about Martin Dubravka, basically just saying what I've said about it being the right time for him to go. If that's the end, brilliant, what a way to go out. And somebody replied with a brilliant point. I think if these last 7 games have proven anything, it's just how vital getting a goalkeeper who can use his feet will be for us. I love Nick Pope, but Dubravka has been so solid, as well as starting promising attacks and phases of play that would otherwise have been opposition throw-ins.
I totally agree.
And again, that goes back to why Eddie Howe in the past, and if reports are to be believed currently, is so keen on somebody like James Trafford, because it adds what Martin Dubravka has done in the last 7 games, but on an even better scale.
It'd be some way to go out, wouldn't it? Helping Newcastle United get to a final of a major competition while also ending the career of Newcastle's actual number one, who ended your career.
The man who replaced you, yeah. Very, very
But
ironic.
it's a very valid point, because Newcastle United do look so assured with Martin Dubravka at the back. Again, last night, just controlling the ball with these. You look away. As we said on Monday, you look away when he's got the ball, because you know he's just going to be able to deal with it. And I do think there will be a real nervousness when Nick Pope comes back, because Martin Dubravka has set the standard with the ball at his feet I said last night, if he managed to merge Nick Pope and his
Martin
shot skipping
Dubravka.
skills, his shot stopping skills, with Martin Dubravka's ability to play with the ball at his
Would be
feet,
winning the league.
you would have the best goalkeeper in the world, wouldn't you? And unfortunately, it's not the way it goes. But penny for Nick Pope's thoughts,
Yeah,
because
certainly.
he'll not again be immune to everyone else's reaction to Martin Dubravka's performance to play. And look, even if you take away the fact Martin Dubravka's brilliant with the ball at his feet and Pope isn't, 7 clean sheets now.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll have to check that. But
What happened against Brentford? No, it's 6,
yeah,
isn't it?
6, I think. Yeah, sorry.
But that in itself, that's something that'll be weighing on Nick Pope's mind as well. I have to come in and I have to match that.
Yeah. But just on Nick Pope, I do get that point, and there will be a lot of pressure on him. But Nick Pope's proven time and time again he can come back in from absences like this and impress. And while his ball playing skills might not have improved, he'll be back at it.
He's still a top shot stopper.
Shot
Stopper.
stopper. That's
But
a hard thing to say.
in terms of Eddie Howe coming out and saying, I would like to give Martin Dubravka a new deal. Is this one of those things where, obviously what happened in the summer with what Eddie Howe said in Germany, and then the club and Eddie Howe kind of tried to say, it was everything was kind of over the top. What was said was taken the wrong way. Is this one of these things where we've got to take a step back and just say, look, he's been honest. It might not be one of those ways having to go.
Yeah, it might not be. It might not be. It was a very surprising comment. I thought, as you touched on, I didn't think Eddie Howe would publicly say it. Eddie Howe has made it clear he wants to keep Martin Dubravka this month, but going forward, I didn't expect that. And I don't know. It's hard to look at it any other way than maybe a slight.
It goes back to what he was saying on Monday, wasn't it? About the business sense over football sense.
Yeah, and also one thing we haven't mentioned so far is Martin Dubravka's wishes in this, and it certainly looks like he's ready to go.
Well, you can't blame him. Follow the path of Ruben Neves, and you can earn yourself a nice bit of cash over in Saudi Arabia. It's a long way to go until the second leg. Eddie Howe has said that you got to put the game behind him now. It's focused on Bromley. It's focused on the next few games to come. How easy is it to do that, though? Will the players really not be thinking about getting their suits measured?
It's that big thing, isn't it? We always thought that when Newcastle United got the Carabao Cup final last time, they took the eye off the ball in the Premier League, didn't they? Now it's obviously different because they're not there yet. But I think Eddie Howe, will be drilling into those players today that it's full focus on Bromley, and they can't have another repeat of Cambridge a couple of years ago, and they obviously then need to go to Wolves and continue their push for the top 4. I think it'll be quite easy for them to sort of switch their attention back. One thing I think will be really interesting in the next couple of weeks is actually looking at Arsenal, because my entire algorithm on social media this morning has been Arsenal Fan TV, Arsenal content creators, the media really piling the pressure on Mikel Arteta. Because as we touched on earlier in the show, this is year 5 of Arteta. He's only got an FA Cup in COVID and a Community Shield to show for it. There's real pressure building now on Arsenal. They've got some big games in the next couple of weeks. They've got to go to Manchester City just before they play Newcastle in the second leg. If Newcastle can continue this form and Arsenal continue to stutter, that just adds the confidence for the second leg.
And obviously, one of the big changes would be the return of Bukayo Saka.
He won't be back.
He won't be back. I'm just looking here, December the 27th.
A hamstring surgery like that, there's no way he's going to be back.
Yeah, Arteta said will be more than 2 months on December the 27th.
He's not going to be anywhere near close getting back for that.
So there we go. I mean, obviously, transfer window open, players can get suspended, form can drop off, but fingers crossed it doesn't. Let's just finish, right, with Mikel Arteta blaming the ball for what happened last night. I thought this was a joke, to be quite honest, and then I found the clip, and, he's 100% laying some of the blame at the hands of the ball, if you get what I mean. But here's what Mikel Arteta had to say.
I know it's not an excuse, but what is the issue with it?
No, it's just different. It's just different, very different to the Premier League ball, and you have to adapt to that because it flies different. When you touch it, the grip is very different as well. So you adapt to that.
Okay, bro. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
What a way to end your press conference, talking about the flight of a Carabao Cup ball.
I mean, is he for real?
I mean, somebody in our office, didn't they, before we came on the show, made a great point that he wasn't moaning about the Carabao Cup ball when they scored 11 goals in the last 3 rounds. And also, I'm sorry, this is my one big, pet hate with managers, when they blame something that both teams have got to deal with. you know, not to dig out Eddie Howe, but when he blamed like the Storm, didn't he, the other week down at
Chelsea, wasn't it?
Brentford, Chelsea, one of those games where they got beaten.
Or the wind, it was Brentford.
It was the wind, yeah. And I thought, no, come on, like when both teams have got to deal with it. I mean, if I'm completely honest, that by Mikel Arteta's standards was actually quite a good response from him. He's usually 10 times worse than that. But yeah, look,
The bottom line is
embarrassing. Yeah,
11 corners, 23 shots a goal, 2 on target.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. You can't blame the ball. You created enough chances to win this game, but Newcastle United defensively were brilliant, organised, disciplined. You had no answer for the brilliance of Eddie Howe and Newcastle United. Blame the ball. Fine, that's what you want to do. You're just taking the mickey, really, Mikel Arteta. But anyway, brilliant win for Newcastle United. On to Bromley. We have a view from the opposition coming on Friday from a Bromley podcaster, which I'm buzzing about because I thought I would struggle to find someone to give the Bromley insight, but I have found someone. So look out for that. Gibbo will be back as well, bringing you the match preview. Aaron, you've come up with some trivia to end the show.
Yeah, anyone who watched the Monday show, we had a good trivia, didn't we? Where you had to name the Newcastle United players who'd also played for Tottenham. In the same spirit, we will do the 5 players.
5, all right.
Who have played for Newcastle United and Arsenal in the Premier League.
So no
era.
Supermac then.
No Supermac.
I think it was Supermac's birthday yesterday, actually.
It was. Yeah, it was. Happy birthday to Supermac if you're listening. 5. I'm going to give you 60 seconds because there's only 5, and if I'm honest, they're all gettable. There's none of them that you think who on earth are they. So 60 seconds on the clock. 5 players to get. Players who have played for Newcastle and Arsenal in the Premier League. Off you go.
Sol Campbell.
Yeah.
Matthew Debussy.
Yeah, the first 2 on my list gone.
Fly
and start after 6 seconds.
I know that, but now I'm struggling. Let me just think. Left back, right backs. And I'm Mikel Merino's 3. I'm trying to think because if they'd gone to Arsenal, I would have been a little bit gutted. I'm feeling. Anyone on loan? No.
You've got 2 left, and they're both currently in Newcastle United squad to give you.
Oh, Isaac Hayden. And the other ones. Oh, Mr. Joe Willock.
Mr. Joe Willock.
Look
there we
at
go.
that.
33 seconds. I'll be completely honest with you. When I was thinking up this trivia yesterday, I sort of did it in my head to try and see who I could get. And in 60 seconds, I got 2, and it was Sol Campbell and Debussy. And I completely forgot about Willock, Merino, and Hayden. So there you go. 33 seconds, you got all 5. Well done.
Quite happy with that.
I'll have to dig out who played for Bromley and Newcastle and get that for you on. Get that for you on
There's
Monday.
one player. I'd be very, very surprised. But thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. The Monday show on a Wednesday. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, get into the comments. I'll get back to every single one of you. Hit thumbs up. Hit subscribe as well. Leave us a rating and a review on the audio channel and click that link for your discounted NordVPN plan. I'll be back tomorrow with John Gibson looking ahead to that FA Cup clash with Bromley on Sunday. And for myself and Aaron, we will see you next Monday. Enjoy the week. Thank you very much.